Well, actually, to be honest, starting out, I was terrible at time trials. I
Really?
yeah, some of my first racing that I started, because being a volleyball player, I mean, you're not. It's somewhat of an endurance sport if you go into a tournament, but you're
Yeah,
definitely
right. On the
fast twitch,
second day,
fast
it's an endurance
reaction.
sport, not the first day.
Exactly. Yep. And so I struggled with that for a bit. I mean, I started out doing some time trials. Even in Cat 5, everybody shows up with their favorite equipment, right? So hey, I just got my new aluminum 105 road bike, and there's the
Right.
guy next to me with like a $12,000, specialized shiv or something, right?
Right,
You're
with a
like, well,
disc. Yeah.
yep, this might not be quite fair. All right.
Five, four, three, two, one. Welcome to Pedaling Squares Through a Mammal's Life, where we talk about all things bike and endurance sports through a master's athlete's perspective. Viewers and listeners, I'd like to introduce you to Will Leet. Will is a very prominent prominent rider in the Northern Kentucky bike riding scene. He is one of the most prominent faces of Licking Valley Velo and an all-around good guy. So Will, thanks for coming aboard. Others may know Will as His Majesty, the High Lord Supreme Commander-in-Chief Calf, first in his name, Emperor of the Hour of Power, Tyrant of TNW, and Sovereign of the Spicy Sprint. Does that sound about right?
That was the name given to me by a good friend, so that is
Well,
accurate.
once it's on Strava, it's fair game.
Yeah, they were an English major, and there's no way once they write something like that you can get away from it. So
Yeah, once that bell's been rung, you're not unringing it. So that's
yep.
I can see where most of that title is appropriate, having ridden for you. And I'm not done introducing you. Viewers, for the record, Will has 4 pages of KOMs on Strava. And in addition to Strava snooping, I will admit to spying on your USA cycling results.
Uh-oh.
And it looks to me like you had a meteoric rise from a Cat 5 racer to a Cat 1-2 in less than 2 years. Is that accurate or inaccurate?
Yeah, to a Cat 2 there. Yep.
Yep. And before we talk about how you got into bike racing, I want to take a moment and kind of pick your brain about what kind of rider you are. I've ridden with you, so I can take a stab at it, and you tell me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
You strike me as a rider that would be well characterized as a rouleur and a time trialist. You might have a great sprint, but I haven't been in the mix to experience it.
Okay.
How would you describe yourself? What did I get right? What did I get wrong?
Yeah. I would lean towards, even if I back up a little bit, I would say everybody I know coming from cycling is usually a burned out runner or maybe a rower or triathlete. I'm a volleyball player. So some of those fast twitch muscles for the high vertical converted to sprinting pretty well. They
Yeah, I
don't
bet.
twitch as fast as they did, through college and as a Cat 2 when I was kind of in my prime racing there. So I've probably developed the more endurance time trial side of it more recently here.
Well, that's interesting. So now now I got to pick your brain some more. So you've
Sure.
seen those Hunter Allen charts that have the
Oh, I
what
know
is
Hunter. Yeah.
yeah, the 5-second sprint or 1 second, whatever it is on the left, and then
Yes.
over to your FTP. And then I think it's kind of fascinating for any rider with access to a power meter to kind of plot themselves on that chart, because it does indicate with some degree of accuracy what kind of rider you are. But I haven't met anybody. Well, I haven't met, but I haven't interviewed anybody that might represent a flat line across that
Right.
that chart, which you might be, right? Because you're
Oh. I'm much more on the top end there. I've got a fairly big spike at the beginning of it, and it's
Okay.
funny you mentioned that. Even our group during the winter, we did some power tests, so I could almost run over in the corner here. I've got we mapped out anonymously everybody's power results, basically on a power curve like that.
Yeah.
Still kind of old-fashioned version versus the software you can do with it now. But probably I have a decent time trial engine, but I would say I think it was around 45 seconds was the top end. Kind of
Your spike.
you. If the game came to 45 seconds at the end of it, I was in pretty good shape to do well.
That's pretty
So
cool. That's pretty cool. I guess one of the reasons I had you kind of sloping up and to the right, or maybe not too dramatic of a slope, is you had some really good TT finishes early in your cycling career and kind of throughout, at least from USA Cycling results. It's like you were real comfortable with putting your nose down and just dropping the hammer for X number of miles.
well, actually, to be honest, starting out, I was terrible at time trials. I
Really?
yeah. Some of my first racing that I started, because being a volleyball player, I mean, you're not. It's somewhat of an endurance sport if you go into a tournament, but you're
Yeah,
definitely
right. On the
fast twitch,
second day,
fast
it's an endurance
reaction.
sport, not the first day.
Exactly. Yep. And so I struggled with that for a bit. I mean, I started out doing some time trials. Even in Cat 5, everybody shows up with their favorite equipment, right? So hey, I just got my new aluminum 105 road bike, and there's the
Right.
guy next to me with like a $12,000, specialized shiv or something, right?
Right,
You're
with a
like, well,
disc. Yeah.
yep, this might not be quite fair. I got much better at it just through ultimately just more riding. I mean, I was still very new to this, coming to it as a volleyball player, so it
Yeah.
took a while to build up kind of that long endurance that you can kind of get for a time trial, right? I call it endurance, but that's why they call it the long scream. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
how long can you take a lot of pain for a while?
Yeah. Let's talk about volleyball, but before we get there, I guess this is kind of half observation, half question. This is really fascinating because you may be literally the first person I've ever met that didn't come from an endurance background, and to learn a skill like time trialing that wasn't natural to you, that speaks volumes. And not to make it about me, but I was actually a terrible climber because I came out of a multi-sport background and I liked doing time trials, and I would routinely get dropped on real steep climbs, and that bothered me so much that I just got good at it. I had to learn
Sure.
to get good at it, and now I'm stronger on a short, steep climb, kind of power wise, than I am. That might be an age factor, than I am
Right.
with my FTP. So you had not the same type of evolution, but you brought a particular engine to the sport, and then just through an act of will, kind of refined it and learned to become a good time trialist. Fair statement.
Yeah, definitely fair. Getting dropped is one of the best ways to get some of those skills.
Oh,
So same way I got better at climbing, and same way I started time trialing, because
yeah.
you know if that in that spirit of not giving up, if you're off the back, you're time trialing anyway to, and
Oh
sometimes
yeah.
you get lucky, coming back and catching the group. They might slow up, but
Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating. So talk to me about being a volleyball player. When did you start playing? Kind of what level did you play at through? And then kind of for our benefit, talk about how that translated into cycling.
sure. I mean, even back as a kid, so the cycling was there, but it was just something you did in the neighborhood. But my
Yeah.
parents threw me into all sorts of sports, baseball, soccer, everything, and it was okay, but nothing ever quite stuck. Volleyball just started happening basically at the beginning of middle school, and I went in, and I knew I had an interest in it. I was not very good, and I'd never played like in an organized format. I was used to just the volley back and forth over the
Yeah.
net. And all of a sudden, I walked into a tryout, and there's very highly coordinated how they're attacking and using all three of their hits. There's different positions that weren't what I thought: middle hitter, setter, and I'm just this tall, kind of not coordinated kid at the time. So that ended up building, at least from the volleyball side. I started out as a middle hitter, just the tall, lanky guy that you
Yeah.
know really awkward, trying to jump up and hit the ball mostly, but not good at passing. Um, that built out a lot of coordination. And I think I would probably even claim to be a little bit of a strategist when it comes to a sprint. There's a lot of fast decision making you have to make up in the air, right? So
Yeah.
you jump up in the air, you're tracking a moving object. People are going over the net to block, right? So you're seeing hands in front of you through your peripheral that you're trying to hit the ball over or around or off and outside. So it started developing, this fast twitch ability, this sense of perception that's around you that you definitely need, like as a sprinter. And you had to make all these snap decisions very quickly.
Almost
Right?
microsecond decisions,
Oh yes,
you
yep.
know,
Um,
because once you've
and
committed as a volleyball player to elevating,
yeah,
right, there's
yep.
no adjusting there. The rest of it's all micro adjustments from
Oh,
that
it's
point.
certainly, yep, timing and decision making, and you have all sorts of different things in your arsenal. You can, you can obviously smash the ball. You can throw it off people's hands. You can
Yeah.
throw it into a corner. There's a lot of things in the arsenal you can pull out against different competitors. So,
I've
um,
watched both women's and men's volleyball for a while. My daughter played, and then I'd watched high school and some college men's games. And the only way you can describe those guys warming up is it's violent, like how hard they hit the ball.
yeah,
And everything that goes into that kind of straight up and down elevation with the jump, but then all the coordination of hitting it at the apex and all the power you can put into it. It's something to behold when you're around guys that know what they're doing.
yeah, yeah. I had a dream of trying to play in college, and maybe got pretty close. There was a point where you could try out for basically like a junior national team that was there. So I think I was getting good enough. I was going up against guys that were getting way bigger than I was. So I was, 6'2" with I think over a 40-inch vertical there.
Wow.
So and that's probably we'll come back to the theme that definitely did a lot of the legwork. It'll build up your fast twitch, but that shows up in the calves maybe.
Yeah. Right.
So that nickname comes later, but as part of what I learned out of that is all of a sudden these other players are getting huge, right? So they're 6'6", 6'10", and I'm 6'2", and I'm hoping my vertical carries me through.
Yeah.
So I eventually moved me to a different position, picked up different skills there. There isn't really like you don't go to college for men's volleyball. Usually it's going to other sports there. So I just really wanted to go to a big school that had a program, and I figured I'd probably end up playing clubs. So I did so at Ohio State, and we had a high performance team definitely in the last few years that we were there. Even on the club side, I recall, we'd scrimmage the varsity team all the time. Sometimes
Yeah.
get our butts kicked. Sometimes we take it out on them, and then I, I I enjoyed. I almost became kind of a snob, I guess, kind of playing with it. You needed such a high performance group of 6 people to play
Yeah.
the same game, right? So it was hard when your friends are like, "Let's go play on the beach," and you're like,
Oh,
"Oh man, like,
right.
oh no, this isn't the same thing." So it's not very like portable or scalable as a sport. It's a great community, and there are leagues like that and everything, but it was kind of discouraging, especially like starting to graduate college. It's like there aren't pro leagues of volleyball that you're going to play unless you do AVP in the sand, right?
Right. And you tell me, but I'm guessing the opportunity for high level volleyball at a recreational level is sparse unless you're I'm guessing in a major metropolitan area with just a high concentration of people. So the numbers work out.
Yeah, and I mean here in Cincinnati and Columbus, I mean it's picked up. That sport's definitely grown. There's a lot of places to go play, but it's not that fun to kind of just beat up on everybody. So,
Yeah. Right.
and
Right.
no one wants to play like the 6'2" guy that's just crushing everybody. Like they're like,
Right.
oh, okay.
Right. So how do you get off the volleyball court and onto a bike?
Yeah, it was honestly just kind of a spur of the moment thing. So I took an internship in Richmond, Virginia, and there's probably some. I mean, it's a great cycling community that's there. There's a lot of people. It's been described in a couple ways. Some people see that it's a bunch of hipsters that are there. Everyone knows now that Worlds happen there.
Yeah.
So there's something
Anybody that
about that
rides
town.
Zwift knows that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. um, I enjoyed being there as an internship, and just it's kind of my first time just kind of living in a big city internship on my own there. And I saw other people riding, and I'm like, man, when I was a kid, I used to just bike around and go see stuff. Here I am in a new town that I want to explore. And so I started looking at bikes, and I always remember like a guy next to me back when I was a kid living in Chicago. He had all the Seven Up stuff and Three Stooges posters, but he had like a couple road bikes that retro road bikes that looked real
Yeah.
nice, and I was like, those are cool. I want to have one of those. So here I was, and I'm like starting to have income, and I'm like, well, I want to get into road cycling. I want to try it, right? Um, Pretty big barrier to be able to jump into it, right? There's always that when your friend asks you, how do I start road cycling, right? You're like, well, what kind of riding are you going to do? Are you going to fully commit into it? And I mean, it's a
How much money
costly
are you going to
barrier to
spend?
entry, right?
Right.
I'm thinking, oh, bikes are 200, $300, and you go into at that time it was like performance bike, and I'm like, I don't see any $200, $300
Mm-mm.
bikes around here, right? And you start researching the components, and you're like, oh man, this is up there. And it's like, at that time, this is still 2015, or actually this would be 2012. Yeah, 2012 's when I got the first road bike I've ever had.
Well, hold on,
Um,
press pause. We all
uh
have to know what it was, and do you still have it?
I do. The frame's sitting in the other room.
Good.
It was I ended up swinging high because the bike that I wanted someone got the day before me, so I got upsold on a bigger bike. So I went with a Fuji aluminum Roubaix with 105, right?
All right, right
And
on.
I'm like, stretched the budget quite a bit, but I don't regret it at all. So it's bright red, and nicknamed Scarlet. And the funny story of that bike is it's gone through several different owners on my team. So there's other people that have ridden it, but the frame made its way back to me. So,
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I'm a little older than you, obviously. My first road bike was a used, you might not even be familiar with this brand, Univega Grand Rally. And
okay.
it was lugged and steel framed, and steel
Ooh.
frame, lugged to steel frame. And I still have it, and I'm going to treat myself to a new paint job and get that out for Retro Thursdays here. But like you, the Grupo has been stripped and put back on. Going original is actually pretty hard because it had Suntour on it. If I
Oh
wanted
yeah,
to
it's
be
gonna be.
completely dialed in, right? So you can
Yep.
find campy stuff all over the place, but finding Suntour down bar shifters, that's easier said than done. All right, enough about
Yeah.
Scarlet. So you buy Scarlet, and then what happens?
Um, well, a lot of people don't realize when you're a kid and you try to pedal up a hill without enough gear and you end up walking your bike a bunch of places, and
Yeah.
relative to the size of you as a human at that time and the size of your bike, it's hard to move that much equipment around. You get on a lean road bike now, and you put down some power, right? Especially me being the volleyball player, I'm like, how fast can this thing go?
Yeah, I bet
All
you
of a
found
sudden,
out.
you're racing around. You're like, holy crap! I thought bikes just went 12 miles an hour like the ones I saw on the bike trail, and
Yeah.
you think the superhuman mutants in the Tour de France are just crazy offshoot,
Yeah,
but here
they
you are,
are.
you
At
come
the
out the
end of the
gate,
day.
for a second, if you're revving it up to 30 miles an hour, or you find a small hill in town and you break 40 for the first time on a skinny tired little road bike, you're like, I had no idea, right?
Right. That I can make this thing go that fast. And
Yeah,
yeah, and you didn't even like evolve into it. Like you bought a bike and had a big old engine. You're like, wow, I can make this thing move.
yeah,
Maybe I'd be good at it.
right,
Yeah.
yep.
Now, did you buy it knowing that you get into road racing, or is it just, hey, I want a nice bike and I want to ride around town?
I wanted something around town to explore, but I wanted to be able to go pretty far, and then I wanted to go fast. And then after doing that for a while, I was like, hey, I'd like to work up to some kind of distance. Everyone sets some kind of initial goal, and they're like, I want to
Yeah.
go ride a century. There's a lot of people that's their first goal. Let me go do 100 miles. Um,
And then you
I
tell
did
everybody
that.
about it.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. You get the sticker on your car or something, or the jersey that comes
Right.
with it. So I think mine was like this tour of Richmond, which I don't think exists anymore. But they had this police motorcade that led you out in the beginning when you try to stick with all the fast guys. It was practice for the motorcade to
Yeah.
make room for governor or something. And struggled my way through that one. That was definitely my first century. But a lot of the riding I started with was just a lot of solo riding until I moved to Charlottesville. So about an hour west of Richmond there. It's close and tucked up to the mountains there. I wanted to find groups to ride with. I only had groups back at college. I found some like old restaurant groups that would go out at like 10 o'clock and ride at night, which was kind of fun.
Yeah.
I tried to join the Ohio State cycling team, but I was graduating, so I didn't do it in time. So I still didn't have a lot of experience group riding until I moved to Charlottesville. started with a group called Bloomfield Road Riders, and quickly found out in the first few rides they were like, "You might be too fast for this. We like having you here, but
Right.
we think you should go try this thing called Tuesday Night Worlds." And I'm like, "What? What did you say to me? Like,
Yeah.
what kind
Yeah.
of description is that?" But everyone
Right.
knows what Tuesday Night Worlds is in town. I'm like, okay, I don't know what that is. There's not a place to really go look it up. I do find a Saturday group there called Fortuna, and kind of their model was it was easier for people to kind of access and ride, but they did a lot of like a tour. So they showed you new routes all the time instead of kind of your three groups at different speeds, and
Yeah.
hopefully they hold together. This group would go out and they'd have two, 4 and 6 to 8 hour turnoffs, and different guides would show
Yeah.
you around in different places, and they do little mini games, sprint for town signs, little time trials, and a lot of experienced riders that were in there. Um, and I got exposed to group riding that way. There were a lot of coaches and mentors that were in there. Um, those riders started saying, "Hey, come to this thing called Tuesday Night
You
Worlds,"
keep
right? And I'm
talking
like, I
about it.
keep hearing about this thing, and I'm like trying to search for it. I'm like, I don't. Um,
It's like
eventually
Fight
find my
Club.
way
No,
to it.
everybody
Yeah,
knows about it, but
pretty
nobody knows
much.
where it is. Yeah.
um, I eventually do track it down after someone, making friends through that Fortuna group, having done a couple 80-mile long weekends with them. And, I think I get someone at a sprint on a county sign. And
Yeah.
I think one of the coaches there was like this gentleman, Saul Yeaton, who's like a Cat 3 track racer that's infamous in Charlottesville for, uh, definitely catching people at all the county signs and planning amazing routes. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but make it to a Tuesday. Don't know what to expect. Show up. The Tuesday Night Worlds ride, and maybe just for context, is I think it had been going for at least 25 years, even before I got there. And
Wow.
um, you see celebrities that have done that coming out now, but it's the ride Ben King cut his teeth on, I guess, too. So
Wow.
he's mentioned it before, and all the places as a 14-year-old person he would go and get dropped. But I don't know any of this going into it. I just know that it's a fast ride and get
That's a
ready.
lot of pedigree.
Uh, yeah. Well, the disappointing part was when I showed up, it was actually starting to dwindle a little bit. So that ride, they were supposed to have two groups, an A and a B, and they would basically kind of chase each other around. They said, "Well, we don't have enough people for the B group," which I was planning to do, and they said, "We're just going to have this A group."
Here's
Right.
your baptism by
So I'm
fire.
Yep, I'm standing next to a whole bunch of at the time it was a whole bunch of Cat 4 racers, a Cat 3, um, some like people who held the record at one point on like this wintergreen hill climb that's in Charlottesville. And we take off, and I make it through halfway and then get dropped, and it's mostly because of the hills.
Yep.
So
I can relate.
that that ride presented a new challenge because I hadn't been confronted with it. With the big engine, things were maybe easier to get started. It was just hard finding the social group and learning the ride skills, and I just
Yeah.
didn't have the endurance. Here's somewhere where I could kind of play with the bigger engine, but I didn't have the full endurance yet, and I didn't have climbing experience.
What was the climbing
So
like down there? Was it comparable to Northern Kentucky, or was it kind of long, shorter grades?
so the roads are much nicer,
Yeah,
but
there's that.
the hills, I'd say like half the gradient. Um, so here you obviously come off the river and you turn a corner and it's going to be at least 7 to 10% going up.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
but
No matter
but
what.
there you just had shorter punches, but there are a lot more of them. And then if you wanted your full selection of climbing and going up into the Blue Ridge Parkway, you can go get that too.
Yeah.
Um, so it probably similar to like on our Tuesday ride, it's probably a little bit less elevation actually. Um, but there are some decisive points. It's a single route that they do, so there are very set areas where people know to win the game on that route.
Yeah, right. Yeah, points of selection, that's for sure. And for you, was it that? Well, tell us about that first night, and then tell us about the drop, because I'm going to force you to relive that indignity. What kind of hill was it?
Yep. So it's called Buck Mountain, and I had been dropped there so many times it's hard to count, and so many have shared in the pain of Buck Mountain because it's placed far enough away from the finish that things start to really activate.
Yeah.
There are climbs before the finish. Leg grenade is the name of the last one you
Oh,
see.
wow.
But I didn't graduate to leg grenade until in my mind, I got frustrated getting dropped on Buck Mountain, so I renamed the mountain in my mind Drop Will Hill, and I decided I was going to sprint and beat everybody to the top of that hill, and then just explode, right?
Right. Right.
And in my
I got
mind,
one
that was a
match and I'm
win.
using it.
Yep, that was my mind. That was a win. I'm like, I'm going to end my race early there, and I'm going to be the best at ending my race there. And pretty
Yeah.
soon, you build up a tolerance for Buck Mountain, and you come over the top as the first rider, and you're like, wait a minute, I'm over the top ahead of people, and I got
What do
some
I do
room.
now?
Yeah, and usually I didn't plan that far ahead. So you find yourself in a group of 4 or 5 people, and you're like, I've never been in the group for the last 6 miles of the ride. What happens?
Yeah.
And then leg grenade goes off, and you get dropped there. But
Now, when do you fit your racing career into this? Like
Yeah.
everybody's got their first fast group ride and they have to go home with their tail between their legs multiple times if you do it right. And then you at some point, most riders that go through that type of evolution, they develop enough confidence to try racing. I mean, I don't know
Yes.
if I'm sketching out your trajectory or not, but
Yeah, very
yeah. So
similar.
to kind of fit the timelines together. So you're buying your first bike, you get the move, you're in Charlotte, you're exploding on these fast group rides, and then at some point, like a seed is planted. Maybe I'll try racing. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so that Tuesday Night Worlds group, the the predominant team that was there called Charlottesville Racing Club, and they're based out of Charlottesville, Virginia. There, the riders in that group had a core set of racers that would go out every weekend. They would even sometimes drive down to Richmond to the Bryan Park training series for crits and come back.
Mm-hmm.
Had a long tradition of doing some races as a group, and I admired that. And basically, once you start making it over Buck Mountain and start making it into the finish, they're like, you should start racing. What does that mean? When are you going to one? How does that work?
Yeah.
So I sign up
Are you
for my
inviting
first
me on the
race.
team? What are we talking
Yeah,
about here?
not invited on the team yet,
Yeah.
but I signed up for it was actually a practice crit at the time for Worlds. So they shut down downtown Richmond, which I had started road biking in. I'm like, let's go back there. They shut the downtown part down, which is it's actually quite a hilly course for a crit course in the middle. I think it was VCU that very much helped it get along. So I show up to the first race. I've never pinned a number, right?
Yeah.
You got to buy a race license, which sounds scary, even though it's just,
Right.
kind of insurance. You got to get a license. You got to show up. You register. Everyone's pinning their numbers on. They've done it before. You're like, I don't know. Of course, I put mine on the wrong side. The ref is like,
And it's
put it on
flapping
the
in
other
the
side.
wind.
She's pinning me up. They're counting down, and I'm like, oh man, this is going to be rough. And corner number 4 is like you're coming 30 miles an hour into a sharp, hairpin right that's going up a hill.
Yeah, you better get that right.
And next to me is VCU and all their high vis and black. That hit coordination and colors is great, and those guys just launch from the gun. So I invited family and friends to that ride, and I am just getting dominated by everybody in there who just came out too hot. But little did I know, everybody was suffering in that event.
Yeah.
So people that were going off and leaving were, flopping back. I just was too in the red to notice. So I was just not aware of the race. So I ended up finishing, I think, like 15th out of, I think it was like 45 starters. And I'm like really, really discouraged. But my Tuesday Night World's future teammates are all sitting on the sideline going, oh, you did this wrong. You did that wrong. You did this one wrong. And I'm like, okay, yep.
Yeah.
But I was actually,
you got to
really
have the
discouraged
humility to listen too.
Yeah. I was just like, I don't know if I'm gonna race. That was really hard. 15th doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
I feel like I made a lot of mistakes. And then I go ride some centuries. I start finishing some Tuesday Night Worlds and start getting into the sprint. And I think I win my first sprint at Tuesday Night Worlds, and they're like, Will, why aren't you racing? So I'm like, okay, I'll give it another shot, right?
Yeah.
So I think that one is Tour Hampton Roads, which is 3 stages. I'm like, if I'm gonna try this thing, I'm gonna give it a full shake, and I'm signing up for 3 of them. We'll just see what happens, right?
Wow. You're not going in putting a toe in there in that water.
Nope. So I come out to a time trial in that one and grab third, and I'm like, no way. I've never been good at time trialing.
Yeah.
We're sitting there waiting for the results, and I start talking to the people, and they all become future teammates. As I find probably 3 or 4 people that are going to start doing all these other racings, and like, hey, are you coming tomorrow? Do you want to work together? Like, we're all new at this. We don't know what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I start building a network. The next 2 days go great. By the way, I get first in the crit and first in the road race after that.
Okay. Well, you're
But
feeling
so then
better
I'm like,
about this investment in Scarlet at this point.
but there was even very little team strategy, but there was some. There was the people that I met at the waiting for the results for the time trial. One of them was just like, hey, we're gonna team up on that guy that won, who had the fancy time trial bike in the crit.
Yeah.
And last lap, one of the heavier guys who wasn't gonna make the sprint was like, I'll just take a flyer because I want my family photos to show me off the front,
Yeah.
right? And
And I'll
he
pull
makes
you.
a move that helps me, right? So
Yeah.
and then I turned around right after that first win. I remember just buying is like in this neat shopping mall. I was like, hey, everybody that was around that table that we talked about with our very limited strategy. I was like, oh, let's go get just PBRs,
Yeah.
right? So we share in the winnings, and they're like, great. Which races are we going to next? And we start seeing each other at all of them. Started traveling together. Meanwhile, back at
And
Tuesday,
you're
I
racing with
joined the
just a
race.
jersey on at this point. You're not on a team or anything like that. You've got your performance cycling kit and that's that, or have you been adopted by a club?
So I'd been adopted. I had a jersey at that time
Okay.
to start the first racing there. So after doing a bunch of those Tuesdays, I had joined that for the mostly just for like you can get some discounts from the bike shop, and
Yeah.
there's
You're a poor
feel like you're part of that group. So
yeah, and you're a poor bike racer. That's how we all start out.
yes, yep. So for those races, I did have a kit, but I still wasn't quite totally in the culture of the team yet. But as I started doing more and seeing those other riders on the team, the Cat 4s and the Cat 3s at races, the same ones I was going to, um, everything kind of meshed together more on Tuesdays. Tuesdays, the Tuesday night worlds there in Charlottesville did dwindle for a bit, but kind of with this renewed enthusiasm I had for racing, I was starting to turn around and help people have the same journey that I did out of that Fortuna group. So there was this pipeline
Mm,
that you could do a Bloomfield ride or a Fortuna ride, or um, just find. I had friends who just found me in the middle of nowhere. Some of my best riding friends, just in the middle of Charlottesville roads. We
oh,
went
I've
to a
made good
brewery
friends
after
that
just
way
catching up,
too. Yeah.
right? So started just guiding them towards Tuesdays, which kind of just built this awesome culture that you could progressively get faster. And it was actually a big change to that Tuesday ride, which we just suggested. It was actually a mountain biker, and this is of course what a mountain biker would do, was suggesting that the Fast Tuesday ride should end at not a brewery but a restaurant that had craft beer,
Yeah. Right. That
right?
sounds like a
And
mountain
and
biker.
and suddenly that fuel started bringing a lot more people in. You could go do the fast ride, get dropped. They'd wait for you before taxiing back to town, and everybody comes back to the brewery, right? You can
Yeah.
drink the same beer as the guy that got dropped, the guy
Right.
that was off the front, right? Um, and so that just Tuesdays fueled the race team. Me getting excited about racing started to pull more people in. I wanted to build a team. I was excited about winning things and wanting to cat up and knowing
Yeah.
eventually I'm going to want to do a team. While the team I had initially saw, they get married, they have kids, so they started kind of backing off, but they
Yeah.
could come to Tuesdays and help coach you, right?
Right. It's hard to
They
get
could
those
send me,
80 and 100-mile rides in when you've got a wife that wants a little relief on the weekend, and
yeah,
you need to watch Junior, and it's a hard argument to make that you need to be out and riding. Everybody goes through that.
yeah, and the racing went well, really well. I after that first, so placed 15th, got that first win, won the Omnium there.
Yeah.
Ended up being like 10 consecutive first places. So there started to be, you almost build like a little, it sounds funny, Cat 5 fame. People, they Strava stalk you, but at the time they would stalk your results on,
Yeah.
for racing, right? Who am I up against? What are their points? What's their score?
Right.
People get real competitive, and they know who you are when you show up to the start line. You're like, this is weird.
Yeah. You got a
Uh,
target on your back.
but then you've got people that are like, why? I see that you're building a team. I would love to be on a team, right? And it's really flattering to somebody to reach out and just say like, hey, do you want to be on the team, right?
Yeah.
Because because everybody's out there racing in their performance cycle or a specialized jersey. But like for anyone to just come invite you and be like, hey, do you want to like, be in the same color together and start riding more? I mean, it's huge.
Everybody remembers their first invitation to ride for another team.
Yeah.
That's like that's like affirmation of all the work you had put into the training at that point, and somebody recognizes that you have some talent and a role on a team to play, and nobody forgets that first invitation because it's
Right.
a validation.
And maybe some of the way we went about it was different, because you expect like a high performance race team is only the best people get asked to be on a team.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, oh, I'm not fast enough to be on a team. I just show up and I'm at the back. And I think just that after that first win and splitting up some PBRs, I mean, we tried to replicate that, and anything I won, everybody that was there, I was more interested in like I liked winning, but I liked the community aspect of it.
Yeah.
So there's a blood, sweat and bacon time trial. And we have different categories. At that time I had, catted up in a different category, but we were bringing, 7 or 8 riders to a time trial, and coming back home with like 4 pounds of bacon. Right. And
Job done.
Splitting the winnings there,
Yeah.
that we would have.
Was it thick cut or thin cut bacon?
I think it was Smithfield. It was near a Smithfield plant out there in Chesapeake, maybe. But I think it was thin cut. It was thin
Okay.
cut. We're cyclists. We got to watch our figures.
That's
so.
right. So are you putting your own team together and then racing with your compatriots as you guys all cat up from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2?
So for me, I was always kind of one cat ahead, but I could turn around and ask people and continue to kind of build a team and teach them what I learned and ride with them. Right.
Yeah.
And the model that we had, so, a lot of your sponsorship models were, give us a bunch of money, we'll buy some helmets, and at the end of the year, I don't know, we'll do nothing for you.
Right. We'll wear your name on our back, and maybe we'll race, maybe we won't. Yeah.
Here, the model was, it wasn't the fastest people that got the coolest stuff. It was, did you volunteer for events to help out? And that would get, every time you did that, a quarter of your kit and up to $20 a race would come back to you at the end of the year. Right. So everyone's like, well, you remove the financial barrier for racing, because if I just volunteer, I'm going to get reimbursed. So I don't mind getting dropped or going off the front or pulling back a move and signing out or anything. Right. So there's kind of no excuse to come out to a race, because everybody's out there. And if you're a volunteer, you're going to have a good time. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the culture you learned in Charlottesville? This was the team you were on. That's how you set up the sponsorship model, or did you experience somebody else setting it up, or is this your brainchild?
They had set that up already. And there were really active sponsors that were in there. So like our bike shop there in Charlottesville's Blue Ridge Cyclery, Reynolds, GM, and Subaru was like they're like the number 1 Subaru dealer in the nation year to year.
Yeah.
Taking on more and more of the team, I did take on different leadership roles and got exposed more to it. The model evolved slightly because we had rapid growth. So we were starting to pull so many people in, and I had, visibility for showing up on podiums and posting pictures. But we were also building this Tuesday Night Worlds that was, exploding too, and showing up at a brewery, and they were getting, 40 people a night showing up on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
That was totally new business. And naturally, being in a sales type role, I was like, hey, I actively want to take on some of the sponsorship side of it. So we grow so quickly that I think this is 2015. 2015 is a really good year of racing. 2016, we turn around and 2 of our riders win the best all around championship of Virginia.
Wow.
We start bringing in some fast people, right? And on top of that, we grow so quickly. We get recognized as the 3rd fastest growing USA Cycling Club in the United States, right? So this model of, are the sponsors paying for volunteers that are excited to just go out there and have fun? There's this Tuesday thing that feels great. There's this kind of community sense of ownership. We're competing with the DC metro area teams.
Yeah, right.
You're in their little backyard. Town of Charlottesville, Virginia, a population of, I don't know, downtown's maybe 80,000, maybe.
Yeah.
Is 3rd fastest growing in the US.
So
in race memberships.
So press pause there. So I'm going to take a little bit of my local experience and ask you if this was similar to Charlottesville. When I was coming up, there was one or two teams with all the Cat 1, 2 guys on them, period. End of story. And you had to earn your way up to that team and then ask to be on it with results and that sort of thing. So there was a hierarchy. There's the fast guys way up here, and I'm not going to name names. And then there was kind of another layer of half club, half racing teams that may have been sponsored by a bike shop, but there'd be a mix of Cat, 3, 4, 5 guys. And then there was strictly kind of club riding. But you knew who the fast guys were. That was just the hierarchy. And when they showed up, it'd be a banger ride. And that was that. And everybody kind of stood back in all of them. And then somebody'd have an ego thing about who was the number one guy on the team. And then that would create the second team, right? Was that a similar reality in Charlottesville? And then you guys are creating a new business model, or does everybody just get along better in Charlottesville than they do here in town?
Well, I wouldn't say everything started out great. So actually, that Fortuna group that I mentioned actually spawned out of a loathing of the Charlottesville Racing Club.
Yeah.
Right. There's a bunch of riders there that started their own gig.
That's how it happens.
And then it evolved into a different model in itself. The change that we made is, that's ancient history. Different people come through. Was that we found 2 to 3 groups there that you could build a funnel for people to jump between the groups, right? And there were events you would collaborate together, and there's nothing preventing you from wearing both jerseys. So now we had people that were wearing, I've got a Fortuna jersey, I wear that. I've got a Charlottesville Racing Club jersey, I wear that. Some people have a Bloomfield jersey. You can have a mix of them all, right? They didn't have to be this infighting between teams and who's the fastest.
And I guess what I'm trying to inartfully put my finger on is this funnel concept is it has to be unique to Charlottesville, given the growth that you saw. And we're going to get into Licking Valley Velo because I think it has some of the very, very same characteristics. But did you sense that you were, or maybe you didn't because you were a young guy coming to it, that this was just an entirely different model and somehow you were creating something that didn't exist before the racing scene as you got into it?
Maybe. I mean, it was a great model that just needed a few changes. Right. So being in a leadership role in a team, right? You appreciate like this community aspect. So when you're dealing with sponsors, they're not sponsors in my mind, they're partners, right? And they're going to scale with you as you're building this. It does deliver value to have a bunch of people that are passionate about Subarus, a bunch of people that are passionate about. We had our own. We had a orthopedic surgeon. We had a physical therapist. We almost had our own healthcare program because people would rather do business with cyclists in the community that they knew, right?
Yeah.
So it expanded. It started great with a couple pillars of what we had there, right? You start a funnel. You clear the air with other teams and find a way to collaborate. You don't try to schedule rides over their ride.
Yeah.
You go up and support their ride, or you go do a fast ride before theirs, then do their ride.
Yeah.
You find a way to kind of make everybody that they can win here. And then you find business partners that are going to scale with the group that you got, right? You're trying to find ways to remove barriers to cycling because it's expensive, and there's value to bringing people to show up places, whether it's foot traffic or social media posts. It's uncomfortable for people to think of, I'm going to go ask a business for money. What do I offer them?
Yeah.
Start a group ride. If you go bring 20 people to a bakery, at least you can get some free coffee.
Right. And some good scones too.
Yeah.
So is this, so at some point we get you from Charlottesville into Northern Kentucky. So what gets you from there to here? I'm guessing you're gonna tell me it's a job move. And here you are, you gotta give me the age and kind of where you are in your racing career and what your priorities are, because you've started something here locally that I want to shine a light on with Licking Valley Velo. And I think it's important to talk about Licking Valley's, or at least your origin story, because it gives some context to what you're trying to do here. Okay.
Right.
So get us to get us from Charlottesville to Northern Kentucky, and then what you experience upon arrival.
Yes, sure. So I do move for work reasons. So there's an opportunity with Honeywell up here in Mason that I just can't miss. It's a combination of different experience that was just kind of tailored to what I had done for work. So it was really hard to leave Charlottesville with the community that was there, but the transition with everybody that was so passionate about it, it wasn't where you pull the plug. Like a good organization, if the leader leaves, it gets hit by a bus and it falls apart, right? Then they really weren't a great leader, right?
Right.
They weren't doing the right thing. So there has to be kind of a succession plan. So um, the huge community that's there and the amount of people that were passionate about it that were able to lead rides and getting experience from that were able to take over. But it was definitely leaving a bigger, Virginia community.
Yeah.
I remember my friend who owns Cutaway there, so they're like a clothing company. Is just like, you can't leave, Will. Like you're part of the culture here. You're not allowed to.
Right. Right.
So I moved here, but I still get basically referrals to different teams here. That's like, hey, go check them out. Will's going to be probably part of your community. But part of me is relieved because running a race team is hard.
Yeah, it is. It's
hey,
time consuming.
I wasn't doing as much racing. I was very much more active in the community. I'm like, well, maybe I'm going to go back and kind of spend some time on my own and get back into the racing side of it. So I ride with a bunch of different groups here, some through referrals, and it's pretty hard. I've moved around quite a bit, and just I was born in Wyoming and lived at least I've moved at least 8 different times now. It's really hard getting started in a new place, and cycling is a great way to do that. Here I had the advantage of knowing some of the teams and where to go, and rode with some of them, and then being a faster rider, you get more recognition. You start taking people's segments by accident, and then people start, who's that guy on Strava, and you get invited to some of these rides. It's just like I found a lot of teams where that top end of the hierarchy, that it was very much a close knit group of friends, and there's nothing wrong with this model. It's just it's they've ridden together for the past 8 years.
Right.
Are they really accepting new team members? They're kind of just happy doing what they're doing, right? So I ride with several teams without really an invite to join the team, which in my experience was, if somebody rode with us 3 times on a Tuesday Night Worlds back in Charlottesville, I'm like, you should be on the team. What are you doing?
Right.
And I went three months riding with 4 different teams in different ways, and got some interest in joining, but never happened.
They never contacted your agent.
Right. The local shop that was here, so Reeser Bicycle Outfitters, and it was close to where I had moved to, was the closest bike shop to go to, and was I talked to all the riders, and they're like, that historically has been the fastest ride in town. I'm like, great, I love Tuesdays. We did this Tuesday Night Worlds thing with Ben King dropping everybody. So I go to that one and start riding with them, and it's really just kind of disorganized. It's just, we go out and they don't tell you where the turns are, and you're racing with 3s and 2s, and they're just kind of blowing you up on random climbs. And it's
and like 2/3 of the riders, or 75%, know the route. The other 25 are following wheels.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you come back after the ride, and I'm like, hey, I don't want to, I've run a whole Tuesday, I've run a race team. I don't want to impose, where do you guys do the social element of this, right? Like, do you get pizza? Do you get ice cream? I'm hoping they get beer.
Yeah.
We're passing breweries. Like Cincinnati's got quite a few. Like, so here goes Darkness, here goes Hofbrau, and then there's a place, Wooden Cask, right next to it, right? And I got laughed at. Which place we stop and to hang out afterwards, and like, why would you do that? You're supposed to go home and recover, and
get your energy drink,
eat beet juice or something, right? So everyone gets in their minivan and goes home, right? And just standing there. But the bike shop people, at least got tacos the first few times. Sometimes they would get pizza, but you're talking 4 or 5 people, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this going, okay, there's an absence here of just like a well-organized kind of club, right? And there's a group in town that just is massive number of people, but it's can be disorganized and a little frightening. There's the top end groups that are out there, the race groups, very tight knit, closed communities, and I'm like, all the ingredients are here. There is a bike shop that was known as the fastest Tuesday ride,
right,
with some people that are interested in it. it's kind of falling a little bit to the wayside. They just, you know, need something to kick it back up, and then you just need to end the ride at the brewery right next to the bike shop, right? All the ingredients are
Yeah.
here to do the same thing over again. And I'm like, I'm not going to do the same thing. I'm like, I ran that whole club, Charlottesville Racing Club, and it's a whole job managing sponsorships and all the events that they host. I'm like, I'm just going to take over Tuesdays, right? And it's at the time called the Reezer Ride. So I start adding organization to it. More people start coming, more groups start getting added. I
Now, how
borrow
big was it
things
when
I've
you
learned
showed
from
up
other
in
rides.
town? How many riders?
There was two groups. There was just the super fast and then not fast group.
Yeah.
So there was 14 in the super fast, and then polite people at the shop would take some people on cruisers around 4 or 5
Yeah.
people.
Okay.
Um,
And it was a drop ride?
it kind of was and it wasn't. It was a slugfest for any hill. So there were some predetermined segments I didn't know about
Yeah.
that you were supposed to go really fast at, but no route planning in advance to know. So I'm like, well, what if we just add route planning? Or so just adding some basic organization on putting a route ahead of time, building a Facebook group for it that you can disseminate information. Um, and they wanted different routes. So I tried to get routes from other people and put them on there. We wouldn't always follow those routes. So it made it hard for people to go and get dropped and then come back to the brewery, right? They could get really frustrated. And you hear from people even now, I've only been here 3.5 years, but you hear people 5 years back, yeah, I tried the Reezer ride and I got dropped and it's terribly organized. I'm like, what do you mean? It's 5 years ago.
Yeah, right. Give me a
Um,
chance.
so it was slow progress. There were 3 of us the first time that ended at Wooden Cast Brewing. And we told the bartender, I'm like, this is perfect. If I got 3, we already got the momentum. We're started. I'm telling the
Right.
bartender, you don't know yet. You guys are going to be a sponsor. There's going to be so many cyclists coming here on Tuesday. They're looking at me like, we've
Who
never
is
had
this
cyclists
guy?
in here. This isn't going to work. The shop owner at the time is like, I want you to start a race team. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that.
This is
And eventually he's like,
Jason
yep,
working on you. Yeah.
yep. And eventually he's like, please, please. And after getting frustrated with trying to court these other teams, I'm like, okay, let's do it. But I have conditions. You're going to change the name of the Tuesday ride. Instead of Reezer ride, shall be called Tuesday Night Worlds. And I have friends in Charlottesville. If they hear this, they're going to cringe a little bit because they claim to be the one and only first Tuesday Night Worlds.
Okay.
However,
I
there
don't know
was some
how far that my reach is on this podcast, so I'm
Oh, sure.
guessing you're safe
Yeah.
for the time being.
But Tuesdays historically were the day that you would go have a hard ride so that you could still recover in time to race on the weekends. So every town, kind of tongue in cheek, had the world championship, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, get your name out of there. This needs to be a neutral brand. Everyone can come ride this ride. I don't care what team you're on, right?
Yeah.
I hate going to rides where it's like, this is this team ride. This is the whatever ride. And then I'm like, okay, we're gonna start a team, but it's not the race model you're thinking of, right? And I got to kind of pull together the informal funnel that was out of Charlottesville.
Mhm.
There was an opportunity here with what we were building out of Tuesdays, and enough interested people that wanted to support some kind of group and have some identity outside of the Tuesday and go accomplish other things. We formed a core group of riders of different abilities to add structure to Tuesday and formalize it, but also to build a group that'll, we're planning, and a lot of riders are already racing now to build that funnel. So to Jason, I basically said, we're going to pick a name that is not Team Reezer. You will be a sponsor, right? They picked the name Licking Valley Velo because it incorporates Licking Valley here, which includes Cincinnati, Covington. So we're trying to be, if we called ourselves just the Newport cycling team, then no, you're only this bank, right? So there's some marketing aspects in consideration that's important, but we said, this Tuesday should be, and it doesn't have to be the Tuesday that was Charlottesville. What if you can just build this Tuesday that everybody goes to and everybody finishes the ride there? You've got bike shop support, you've got a brewery there that everybody can come finish at.
Literally a stone's throw away from the start, both of them. Yeah.
Yep. So you can come out on your cruiser and work your way up to thrown down with Cat 2s in the AA group, right? And some of the naming of groups gets funny. That's a different marketing exercise. But so it was a chance to, again, it's a great model that was in Charlottesville when I found Charlottesville Racing Club, a great model when we kind of built our own Tuesdays there. And here was kind of a blank slate that I could incorporate all of those things and kind of start out and run a different operating system for a Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
And it went. So we have the Tuesdays. I mean, we've had, I think the Facebook group is now 530 people on the Tuesday
Wow.
group there. Uh, we've had probably well over 120 people show up on a Tuesday that can separate into 7 different groups of different abilities.
Let's
There
stop
are
there. That's
okay,
what, 3.5 years and a tenfold increase in participation.
yeah,
It's pretty good ROI, right?
right,
Right. So
definitely,
help the viewers and the listeners understand how the rides set up, because it's actually very ingenious, the stratification of riders, and the I would say the comfort level in experimenting going one ride up, because we started out this conversation about both of us getting um, dropped on our first group ride, and everybody remembers that, and it just kind of sticks in your craw, and you have to build up the courage to come back to that ride, because if you get dropped again, then you feel you beat yourself up for a week. You go back and
right,
get, and if it's a drop ride, you better know the route home, right?
right, yeah,
and,
definitely,
and fast groups pride themselves on being no drop rides, or excuse me, drop rides. So getting somebody to bridge that gap and remain interested is actually it's a big lift. So
yeah.
how do you accomplish that lift?
Well, I wouldn't claim that our model is anything that's perfect. There's probably some joint values between all those different ride groups that you might have. Maybe for simplicity's sake, you have people that just want to get into the sport and tour town and see roads, right? You have riders that do want to be the fast riders and win races and get dropped or drop people. You have other people that want to do group ride etiquette and learn how to more efficiently ride,
Yeah.
technically, right? So those are maybe three. There's probably a lot more groups, and I don't think we've uncovered all of them.
Well, let's
But
cover them. You got the cruisers, right? That's what you call the
yep,
guys that are around town. They're usually on like a fat bike or something equivalent,
yeah. So
cargo bike.
mellow rollers,
I got it wrong. Mellow rollers. My
they
apologies to my mellow roller friends.
I won't claim ownership of the name. That name had been around, but the group that's evolved out of it now, it's people who have just gotten their first beach cruise that they're on. I see cargo bikes, I see gravel bikes, I see mountain bikes, all sorts of things. As long as it's got two wheels,
Yeah.
e-bikes are in that group, and they get a tour of town, all the secret places, and some of it off road, and some of it
Yeah.
kind of exciting. You come back with muddy wheels sometimes, um, but but they kind of have a safe tour of town, right? It's comfortable to get back to, and it's not an aggressive pace. Everyone's there to help each other get through it at a
Right.
easy pace. A level up from that, basically, you're venturing out somewhere to go out and back or some kind of loop. So you have to be a little more self sufficient. But there's experienced riders that have been there a while that can coach you on how to do it. So there's multiple stops. The pace is a little bit higher, but there's lots of regrouping. So you're okay to be on your own a little bit and then come find the group.
Yeah. But there's going to be
Um,
somebody there to change your flat tire if you want to go on your first group road ride. You don't have to,
yeah,
you don't have to worry about that.
and then above that, people start taking an interest in. Well, I found out I'm more efficient in the group, and I've gotten stronger. Show me how to optimize riding in a group, right? So group ride etiquette can quickly be lost. You hear about the people that surge, the people that are off the back, some people riding over the center line. All sorts of crazy stuff happens at that level.
Yep.
Uh, but you and there's different ways you can rotate through a pace line, and you learn about drafting. So you learn all those technical skills, right? When you master those as a group above that effectively you're trying to do that at a quick enough pace to keep away faster groups behind you, right? So you're on the same course. You're in there with the big boys, but you're leaving 4 or 5 minutes before.
Right. Making a game
And the
out of
more
it.
efficient your team is, the longer you're going to stay away from those groups. And the beauty of kind of having that group, even though your faster riders complain that they have to pass it, as long as you set the expectation and skills ahead of time,
Yeah.
here's how you safely pass and to overtake another group. That group can jump onto the tail of a faster group and challenge themselves, and
Yeah.
everybody arrives at the finish at a relatively similar time to taxi back into town. And that was a similar model we borrowed from Tuesdays, but the the culture shift as you go through those is, here's a very beginner type group with, I'm learning the community, I'm making friends, I've just started, please coach me and help me. uh, I'm starting to build more endurance, and I want to get better and go farther and faster. I want to get better at group riding. These all have separate objectives, but the master vision is everybody wants to be inclusive, and we appreciate that they're diverse rides. So I don't always ride the fastest ride. I really actually enjoyed mellow rollers. We took the Dunkin' Donuts tandem bike out on a mellow rollers ride, right? It was great.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
You don't have to ride the fast ride all the time, and it's great to go down. And sometimes I enjoy some of the coaching, so I'll drop down to a B group just to see what do they do, what's different, where can I
Yep.
help out, right? I don't.
Right.
It doesn't always have to be about me trying to do this competitive ride, but the the range of cultures is so different, and there's an inflection point you have to have at some point of, hey, I'm new, I'm very humble, to it's celebrated to be dropped on a ride because you did the most training you possibly could,
Yeah.
right?
Right. You found you found your breaking point, and you go back the next week and you try to get a little bit further, and that's how you get stronger. And I think what your model sets up is two things. One, a high degree of inclusiveness from a barrier to
Yes.
entry type of thing. And I think that's it's unusual in a good way, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Because you're breaching that chasm that I'm talking about, from the real fast guys down to people that want, let's be honest about it, they look up to them and they want to be fast like that someday, or at least take a shot at it. And if you don't have a path to that direction, you're always a little bit nervous about showing up at a fast group ride, or how the guy's going to look at me or perceive me if I get dropped, that sort of thing. And what and I want to talk a little bit about the format of these rides, because it's very interesting. You put I think it'd be fair to say you have a fast B and a B, right?
Right. Even
Right.
even within groups, there's
Yeah. And so they'll go out at predetermined durations, or gaps, and they're doing the same ride that the fastest guys are, and that gives everybody the opportunity to really get better as a rider, as far as etiquette, and that's a weird word to use, but cyclists use it. We'll come back to that, and then be able to kind of push yourself from one group to the next on the same course, and that's that's an opportunity that your average cat 4, cat 5, or even aspiring racer doesn't have a funnel like that in a lot of towns. We have it here
right.
in northern Kentucky and southwestern Ohio, Cincinnati, greater Cincinnati area. And that's I want to use a word like ingenious, because you're taking a model that worked and you brought it over here, but it does present a path for everybody. And you can just decide, hey, I like riding bikes at a B level. I'm a runner or a swimmer or a dog walker, and this is as fast as I want to be, and I got a place to drink beers with my friends afterwards. That's
Right.
and maybe the beer drinking is the most important part. We ought to give a shout out. It's the Wooden Cask, right? Am I saying that right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. In Newport, Kentucky. Let's talk a little bit about etiquette. I was just yelled at. That's how I learned how to ride in group rides. You do something wrong and somebody yells at you, and you don't do it again,
Right.
right? And that's an embarrassing way to learn, and it sets up a little bit of animosity, but you grow up and you get over it. My impression, because I've done a lot of the rides from the AA down to the slow Bs, there's a receptiveness to being instructed that I've literally never seen before. Like
Sure.
I want to call it a safe place, because that's got weird political connotations, but it's a place that you can go and learn that you got to drop off a half a mile an hour on the front end when you pull off on a group ride, when you're doing a pace line, and you're learning that from a person that's being friendly about it and just tapping you on the shoulder, versus getting scolded. So how do you set that culture up from a ride leader standpoint? What did you do to create
Yeah.
that culture, and who executes it?
So some of it was learned, again. My first experience with a dwindling group was I was not the fastest for the Charlottesville Tuesday Night Worlds, right? And taking ownership of the riding, adding structure, making the weekly posts, and then separating the groups and launching them, and still getting dropped. It's really hard on any group ride to feel empowered that you are able to yell at people, right?
Yeah.
Yelling's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just loud communication, right?
Right.
Now your intentions may not be great and your delivery could be poor, but there's so many people in a ride that either through groupthink or you just don't feel like you have the authority, not being the fastest rider. We tend to associate the fastest rider in the group is the
The
leader,
boss.
right? And they'll, if they yell at you, then they obviously know what's right.
Right.
And I can tell you that's not the case. So the real question is, how do you enable regular riders, even people getting dropped, to regulate, properly how people should ride in that group, right? And empowering them in a way that they can do that. So there's a lot to overcome in empowering somebody to do that. So part of our model with Licking Valley is just people that the community recognize as a safe rider. They are upgraded. Sponsors cover the difference in it, and they get this different color stripe on their jersey, right?
Right.
And they're proud to do that. It's a recognition of the community, and that, not that they're fast, it's just that they're safe, predictable, friendly, and they're inclusive and bringing other people to the ride.
And committed to
That
the club.
person, that's a person I want to call me out when I'm doing something wrong, right? So the person that gets that, says, "Wow, I feel better that I can do that now. The community told me I'm a good rider. I'm a safe rider, right?
Yeah. They're
Not just the
empowered to
fastest, but
instruct. Yeah.
yeah." And so they feel enabled to do that, and it's someone that's friendly that does it. So everyone's a little more receptive. They're like, "Oh, that person, yeah, I love getting coached by them,"
Yeah.
right? And you start finding out that that person that learned how to do that. Well, I learned from the person in the blue stripe jersey that you shouldn't do this, right? Well, that's the next person for the blue stripe in the making. They're like, "Hey, they were polite in how they coached me. I learned that from them, so I'm kind of invoking their authority to say you should do the same thing, but I'm looking out for you in the right way." You can start building,
Yeah.
that empowerment to coach others, right?
And just so the you and I know this, but just so the viewers and listeners that might be interested in the ride, the way that's set up is we all show up at 6:15 and the groups are broken out and the ride leader is identified typically by you, but maybe by somebody else. And visually that blue stripe that you're talking about is calls them out as, or designates them is probably a better word, designates them as that particular group's ride leader. Fair statement.
Sure. and
Yeah.
and some of the the word choice is actually really important when it comes to it. We don't call them ride leaders. That implies like I'm accountable to everybody on this ride, and
That's a good
I
point.
have to lead them and bring them, and I have to be at the front because I'm the leader, and I have to be the fastest. And the reality of like a good leader is they're much more of a coach and a guide. So we say these are ride guides. Um, they're not accountable for you going and causing mayhem, but they are going to correct your action when you do something that endangers the group, right? Or they are going to coach you. You need to be receptive to them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's really intimidating to tell somebody, "Hey, I know you're in the back third of the group, sometimes getting dropped, but you're such a safe rider, and if you only said more things to the front of the group, that whole group would stay together."
And go
Uh,
faster.
right. Telling that person they're a leader, they're going to go, "I'm going to find another group," right?
Yeah.
That's way too much responsibility.
Yeah.
Uh, but if you told them, "Hey, I just need you to be somebody people can count on. Tell them where the route is. Tell them when they're doing something dumb." They're like, "Okay, that's achievable. I would love to do that." Right.
Right. Yeah. You don't have to earn your stripes, so to speak.
Yeah.
Excuse the pun.
Right.
You're promoted from within or designated. And from my impression, or you know, I'm obviously have you on the podcast because I'm impressed with the organization, but it works. Having
Right.
been in the B rides and the A rides as well. So you got a good thing going. So let's go over the numbers a little bit here. So you are you averaging $120 on these rides?
There's all sorts of factors that could change that. But yeah, pretty regularly now, it's probably 100 people.
Yeah.
And it definitely comes. There's kind of a wave as you build it up. The biggest event typically, if it's not too cold, will be our last Tuesday that we declare before Halloween is Biketoberfest.
Mm-hmm.
So we start the same type of ride format, but it's a costumed ride. We kind of abandon the structure for just some fun local
Yeah.
riding, but then we do bike limbo, a slow race where you have to be the last one across the line in 50 feet or so. flat tire changing competitions, and it's kind of a little bike mini game kind of
Yeah.
carnival thing that we
Yeah.
do that everybody can do. So
And in addition to that, you have some weekend rides that you've set up that have that concept of you got a 20 mile, 40 mile, 60 mile route, depending on where you turn off. How long have you been doing the weekend rides?
weekend rides, we're probably somewhere near maybe 8 or 10 of those that we've done.
Okay.
Um, and when I think about Tuesdays and what we've built as a platform that anybody can you know do one of these groups, it's still changing. We're going to launch a off mixed surface group, right? So, and eventually I'd love to have a mountain bike group. Everybody can congregate and leave and go get beer at the same place. It's just a
Right.
platform, and
Right.
you can change groups and still see your friends. We've only conquered Tuesday. There's
Right.
6 other days of the week, right,
Right.
that we can go after, without trying to step on anybody's toes for rides that are already scheduled. So finding something that's already there or a vacancy that happened has been important. So the Saturday started because COVID happened. There's several rides abandoned. There was a Saturday women's ride that was abandoned. There was some long-standing Saturday rides locally out of the shop here that were abandoned. So they've been a little slow to come back, and we maybe been a little bit early. But we found a future sponsor that we can scale with, who's just opened a bakery. And I said, it'd be great for you guys. I don't have a place that opens up before 7 o'clock to go get
Yeah.
coffee to start a ride, right? So what do you think? We'll slap you on the jersey. We'll start showing up for a Saturday ride, and it's the wooden cask story all over again.
Mm-hmm.
First ride we show up with 3 people, and they're like, yeah, okay, this isn't going to work. But consistency, patience, and word of mouth.
Right.
We've had 14 people on that ride, and it's still growing.
Okay. Let's
Right.
give a
And
shout out to that bakery. Which bakery is helping you out?
yeah, that's North South Bakery.
Okay. And
So
where are they
they're over
located?
there, right across from Braxton Brewing. They share a space with Birkus.
Okay. Yep. Yep. Yeah. And as far as sponsors, if they're interested, large or small, how do they get a hold of you? On your Facebook page?
Yeah, so there's an external Licking Valley just page that you can find. Honestly, the best way is probably just come to a Tuesday.
There's
I
that.
would go up on any ride, or even if you don't have a bike, 8 o'clock is pretty much when the ride finishes at Wooden Cask. You'll see plenty of people to ask around.
Mm-hmm.
Just look for anyone in a kit like this. They can direct you towards me or someone to chat about it. Um, the funny part I would just say is, even recommending for any type of bike community that's partnering with a community business, and businesses that are considering this, it's not your traditional way of advertising, right? You don't want to buy the billboard. I
Yeah.
think you earn a place on the jersey, but it's really how you give back to the community that works. So um, I would just consider what ways can a cycling team help you and scale with you as a business, um, and which ways can you give back to the community that it's kind of a cyclical process, right? um, so if you're there to just buy a billboard, I'd gladly take your money, but at the end of the day, when you come back next year, I can't tell you
Yeah.
that I did anything much more for you, right?
Yeah.
um, I have examples of, we did have a housing sponsor. We sold a house through them, but they actually declined to sponsor us even after we sold the house through them. um, so
You
don't have to
didn't
be
claim
bike
your
specific.
5% on
Yeah,
that?
yeah. You don't have to be a bike company. Like the former team that I had, we had a dentist, a physical therapist. We sold probably 30 cars a year through a dealership, right? Just basic things a group of people need. So just recognizing that, yeah, it fundamentally it's a big community with a lot of shared interest, and we do a fun activity that keeps people fit and in shape. And for a lot of people, it's a source of, um, you know, I would say stress relief, but for some other people, it's their exercise. For others, it's their way of commuting around town, and all those people can get together. Just at our core base, we're just a community of people, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, we built it
With a
around the
shared
bike,
interest, riding bikes.
right? Yep.
Yeah. So if folks are interested in sponsoring, their options are, the preferred method is an in-person meeting at the Wooden Casket around 8 o'clock on Tuesdays. And then the alternative would be to track you down on Facebook. It's just that easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. It's time for the lightning round.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. All right. For you, Will Leet, power meter or no power meter?
Luke, turn off your targeting computer. Once you've ridden with it for enough, and you can generally know where your power is, it's great for a time trial to know how much
Yeah.
you're hurting in the moment. But I have made fun of someone on our ride because uh, once every 3 seconds they glance at the power number to know what it is. Um, there's in my mind, to maybe quote the Illuminati, uh, there's pretty much one power number you need to know, and that is V. And if you are not going, if there's room to go faster, then your power number isn't high enough, and you
Yeah.
can keep pushing.
The rules. All right.
Yeah.
So it sounds like once upon a time you might have ridden with a power meter, but no more. You're a classic rider at this point.
Yeah, I enjoy much more not having it. Although the prices are coming down for one, I probably will consider one in the future. I wouldn't stare at one on your screen until you are in a time trial.
Yeah.
The funny part is everyone hearing, "Oh, I just broke 1,000 watts," right? And
Yeah.
that's their pride is the highest 1 second number. That I'm like, I don't know how many times you use 1 second number in any type of race that I know of.
Not too
Right?
many. Not too many.
So
Yeah. I guess editorializing a little bit. Well, let me ask you this question, then we'll come back to me editorializing. Heart rate monitor or no heart rate data?
heart rate, power has value if you've built up that information and know how to ride. So
Yeah.
not invaluable, very valuable once you've built your power curve. I just prefer not to after. For heart rate, it's a lagging indicator. Perceived level of exertion is better. 1 through 10. 10
Yeah.
means it really hurts, and if you look down at your heart rate and it's above 180, you're at level 10. Right?
You have a corresponding indicator.
Uh, there's actually a slight delay there, so you might be like, I feel like 10, and look down and
Yeah.
it's at
We've all
7,
been there.
and then you're like, wow, I feel really bad today, and you can psych yourself out there.
Yeah. This is my editorializing during your lightning round. I agree with you. Outside of time trialing, you don't need your power meter. It's a data point when you're blowing up on a 12%, 18% grade, but it is what it is, right? And I
Yep.
use my heart rate to calibrate how much longer can I go at this rate and still finish the ride. And everybody kind of knows where they are
Yes.
at that point.
Yeah, people start off too spicy. You can double check that it's not. The one other thing I do enjoy about power meters, though, is everybody's willing to tell you how much the numbers are for them and
Yeah.
brag about them.
Yeah.
And if you make a mental note of those, and I'm an engineer, so I love knowing based on their size and how much power they have, you can really play with people's heads on the ride.
Yeah, they're giving information away, right?
Yep.
That's why Froome, you can get everything on Strava except his power numbers.
Right.
Right. And you can't blame those pros for not publishing it. I mean, it is insider baseball information for professional cyclists, but your point is well taken. If you can get somebody's weight or estimate their weight and they tell you their power numbers, you know where you can mess with them.
Yeah.
For sure. All right. Tubeless or tubes?
I like tubeless. It's a little more work, but there's a level of safety there. So when you bomb a descent at 60 miles an hour with tubes, and there happens to be a glass shard there, if you have
done.
a catastrophic pop of your front tube, you're going down. If you have tubeless, you maybe have 3 seconds to react, but
Right.
I'll take my odds there, and I'll deal with the tire milk and all that,
Yeah.
and the mess of it. But I'd rather have those 3 seconds if I can get them.
Well, I'm coming back around to tubeless. I still reserve judgment. I was a very early adopter 15 years ago with the Hutchinsons and the
Oh
stands,
boy.
and they were a mess and they left a bad taste in my mouth. But I'm giving them another go. The fact that you can throw a tube into a 28 at this point in time, it makes it kind of a wash. It takes away that permanent flat problem that used to beleaguer tubeless. All right. Beige / gum wall sidewalls or all black tires for WIll Leet?
I think it definitely depends as a style on your frame, but I would prefer on the road side. I like the clean look with carbon wheels of having just all black. If you've got aluminum rims or you're anything gravel, you're probably looking at gum wall.
All right, good answer.
But I slightly miss the colored tire side of things. Back the Michelins used to have some different color
Yes.
stripes that match the bikes.
Yep.
All the current color schemes, you can't pull that off anymore.
Yeah, we have seen a dying off of colored tires. I'm embarrassed to say I had both red and yellow ones when it was
Oh
popular.
boy. Nice.
Yeah, I'm admitting that. Shouldn't be. All right. Will Leet's preferred sock height.
Yes, there's generally an equation to do this, but 6 to 7 inches. But I would defer to Ridge Supply. Matt Hawkins is your guy there. He's mastered that with defeat.
All right.
So that's another Charlottesville related friend of Charlottesville Tuesday Night Worlds. So I would defer to Matt Hawkins.
All right. Fair enough. And you got a sponsor plug in there. Okay. Preferred sock color.
There's so many colors out there. Most are acceptable. I just say, and there's people who would fight me on this, but you can't have black sock or black shoes with white socks. Most of the other
Yes.
color combinations, you're going to be all right. But it looks like you're riding around with clogs.
Yeah.
Color wise, there's some weird ones out there, but hey, socks are easy, collectible, and it's something cool that you can kind of stand out with.
Yeah. Yeah. Just can't wear
Nope.
white ones with black shoes.
That's the only one. Yep.
There's probably a Velomani rule on that. That's a very good point. All right. Structured training or group rides to get in shape?
Great question there. Depends on timing, bit of both, and what your goals are. I would say for me, I gravitate towards the group riding because that's what's going to push me. Computer games, you can plug into one and do whatever virtual races you want there, but they will not tell you how to correctly corner or how to correctly draft or how to perceive how other riders are going to act. Right.
Well, now you're taking one of my questions out of order. This is question 14. Is Zwift racing really racing? Actually, let me ask the question again. Is Zwift racing really bike racing?
Oof.
We're gonna make some enemies today.
We are. I can think of a person back in Charlottesville who was so fond of the Pain Cave and was early pioneering some of the sponsors for indoor racing. He would take his Garmin off to come ride Tuesday Night Worlds because he didn't consider that the real world yet. So the term IRL, if you've not heard, in real life, I prefer IRL bike racing.
All right. That's a diplomatic answer, and I'll let you land there. All right. Long gravel ride or long road ride?
Oh man, fall's coming up, so there's both of those. There's not too much gravel in Ohio. I would say if you're ever visiting Charlottesville, you can get both of those together.
Oh yeah.
And with a road bike, it's nice enough that you can. For this fall, I'm planning on probably some long road rides. There's people talking about doing either Louisville or going up to Columbus on the bike trail there. Just long, easy ride. You just got to eat enough.
Yeah.
But then I'm also going back to Charlottesville for there's an underground event we call Calftoberfest. Not to be confused with Biketoberfest. Calftoberfest is a gravel camping event that we just go out through the Blue Ridge Mountains and ride a ton of gravel.
Yeah,
100% gravel.
That's going to be fun. All right. Does Will Leet prefer a 15% grade for 5 minutes or 5% for 15?
Oh, definitely the 5%.
Yeah, I knew you'd answer that.
I can definitely be a power climber if I have to. The steep stuff. The funny part there is if it goes over the top steep, it just becomes a calf raises. So then you can actually make some time back up.
Right.
But anything between super steep and 5%, I'm not the best at.
All right. Now I'm going to get controversial again. Greg LeMond or Lance Armstrong? You're too young to remember Greg. You're aware of him.
Yeah, aware of him. I've seen videos.
You didn't watch him race like I did.
No, I'm maybe a generation removed of friends who had raced with him, maybe. Yeah, so LeMond.
All right. One more controversial question. In your opinion,
well, hold on. Favorite pro cyclist though is probably still Ben King. So he's
it's got to
a
be
friend of mine. So
yeah, I was just picking two polarizing characters in cycling, American cycling lore, and making you uncomfortable by picking one. But we'll both go with Ben King. He was my first pro I followed on Strava, by the way.
Okay.
He's a real deal. He seems like the common man's pro rider. He doesn't come off as aloof or kind of a jerk. He seems like a legit nice guy. Could be totally wrong about that.
No, you're right. You're on target there.
Yeah, and I'm actually a little selective about the pros I follow on Strava. So he's in a very small group. All right, I took the Zwift questions out of order here. Zwift or rollers?
I've had some good fun with rollers, but we do a group trainer class, and someone came off the rollers and sped across the room once. So
Hello, Domino's.
yeah, I'd actually prefer just a regular, like a direct drive trainer.
Yeah, same here. Okay, and last question: why do you like bikes so much?
Ooh,
And feel free
that's
to
a
wax
tough one.
philosophical, because it's
Yeah.
the last question.
I mean, there's something to it when you were a kid and you're able to get on one, right? And the kind of joy of just like conquering, not having training wheels and being able to like extend your distance. You all of a sudden went from being able to, run a couple blocks, and that was how limited you could suddenly bike to your friend's house that was a couple miles away, right?
Yeah,
Then
the world got
all
bigger.
of a Yep. And then all of a sudden your friends got bikes, and then all of you could go different places, right? You could keep exploring. So I think that's part of it is it's something you learn as a kid. That's an accomplishment, and there's more and more accomplishments and different sides of the sport that you can get. You'll always N+1 for different bikes and
Yeah, for
new
sure.
activities. So it just keeps going, and you just keep meeting more people that are part of it. So
Yeah, when you get a little bit older, the friendship side of it becomes even more important. But
right.
I have a kind of similar, I don't want to call it origin story, but there's something timeless about riding your bike. Everybody did it as a kid. Everybody understands it. And I will point out that something gets lost in civility between motorists and cyclists. It's like, almost every motorist has ridden a bike.
Right.
So you have that in common with them. But somehow they forget that they ever rode a bike if you're slowing them down by 10 seconds or 5 seconds to wherever they're going to get. But I probably shouldn't end the podcast on a rift about motorists. So let me end it here with a great big thank you for taking the time out. And just to sum it up, if people want to track you down, they can Strava stock you at WIll Leet. And then if they want to, from a sponsorship perspective, reach out to you, it's either in person at the Wooden Cask on Tuesdays at 8 or on the Facebook page. And then if folks are interested in joining, all you got to do is show up at 6:15 at the parking lot across the street from Reeser in Newport, Kentucky.
Right.
That's all the ways to get a hold of you or join the team.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, everybody's welcome to join the team, even if you're on another one. We're not,
exclusive.
Anybody can wear our kit. We're not going to fine you if you're wearing a different one or,
right.
Mismatched.
Dock you a race entry.
Yeah. Right.
Right. All right. Let's sign off. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thanks,
All
Chris.
right.